What's going on, everybody? This is Always Talking Ball. Tyler Noe, Lance Barton. We've hit you with the ACC quarterback rankings. We've hit you with the Big Ten quarterback rankings. Now we're hitting you with America's Conference of Chaos, Big 12 quarterback rankings today. Lance, how we feeling about that?
Love it, man. I think that this is, you and I've talked about this. I think this could be far as like the most like depth of like quality quarterbacks from top to bottom in the conference, the Big 12. We're not talking about draft eligible quarterbacks. We're not talking about who's going to be the best NFL quarterbacks. We're talking about who's going to be the most productive and the best quarterbacks like in college football, the numbers that they're going to put up and the overall depth across the Big 12, man. When we were taking a deep dive into this and ranking these quarterbacks, it's insane, man. A lot of good trigger man in the Big 12.
Yeah. So just like with the ACC and the Big Ten, we're going to go about these rankings with the expectations going into 2025 weighing pretty heavily. But we're going to also factor in kind of some of their past performance as well, kind of what we think they can be. And kind of like, going with a couple of these guys, you'll notice like we're going to assume that, they're going to be 100% healthy, when we're ranking them. So let's start off. Number one, I think this is probably number one in everybody's Big 12 rankings, and I think it should be for good reason. Sam Leavitt, quarterback, Arizona State. Like we mentioned on kind of our post-spring Big 12 rankings, we talked about the Sun Devils, how we have them at number one. Last 7 games last year, Sam Leavitt threw 16 touchdowns and only 2 picks. So he kind of really had a nice coming out party the last half of the season, and played some good teams. I mean, played BYU. They were ranked, played at Iowa State in that championship game, at Kansas State, and then obviously the playoff game against Texas, where, a lot of people will say that was the Cam Scattaboo show. But, I mean, Sam Leavitt, he did some good things. I mean, he was forced to throw more times in that game than he had thrown in any other game during the season. He threw 46 pass attempts. So it definitely, and obviously, Arizona State offensive line going against that Texas defensive line, they struggled a little bit. So we saw that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched on something there that I really wanted to highlight. Like I think what's even more impressive about what Sam Leavitt did in that back half of the season when Arizona State went on that crazy run and won like their last 6 games of the year, including the Big 12 championship game and of course played Texas in that bowl game. The fact that he put up the numbers that he put up and the completion percentage, the touchdowns, the yards passing per game, he did that against 2 teams that were ranked in the top 10 in pass defense in Iowa State and Texas, and 3 total, including BYU. So he wasn't going against like trash pass defenses. We've talked about this before. Like, if you got a defense that's your number 1 ranked in pass D and all you're playing is military academies who run the ball every time, I mean, that doesn't really tell me that much. Obviously, Iowa State and Texas and BYU, that's quality competition that he was putting up those numbers against. And, this year just being year 2 in, Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Arroyo's system like this, being like, I mean, the expectations that he has, seeing some of the videos too coming out of the summer of like the training camps that he's been at, like, dude, he looks like freaking like, dude, he looks like a Greek god, honestly, out there, right? He's like 6'5", 225, 230, can run, got some legs, and can like just sling it. And the fact that he's got his number 1 target back in Jordan Tyson, it's going to be back. You would think that we can project that Sam Leavitt's going to have a huge year for the Fun Devils this year.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, look at the bottom of the screen and hit that subscribe button. If it's already hit, we appreciate you very much. If not, it doesn't cost you a thing, and we appreciate you as well. Thank you. Number 2, and really, like, honestly, number 2 through 8, like you could put these guys really in any order. So really, we did the best, but we did the best we could. Number 2 with Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson, and that will shock some people, obviously, who aren't really familiar with Sawyer Robertson's game. Been at Baylor a couple years, was at Mississippi State beforehand, and you mentioned too, like Baylor back half of the season last year was really good. And they basically the first half of the season, they decided to start the wrong quarterback. They had Daquan Finn.
They were 6-0 the final 6 game, averaged like 44 points per game. He had 20 touchdowns and 5 interceptions at 289 yards passing per game. in those final games, including the bowl game against LSU.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he did it on the road a couple times at West Virginia and Houston. And so I just think the potential that he's got, coupled with the weapons that they've got coming back, especially with the running game too. We talked about Bryson Washington before, just to complement that passing game and take some of the load off of him. But this is still a guy he's going to throw for over 3,000 yards if he's completely healthy this year, easily.
Yeah, I mean, Jake Spavital, offensive coordinator there. Last year was his first year as OC for Baylor. Like, if you really look at Spavital's history, I mean, dude, his offense is just, and quarterbacks in general, usually put up huge numbers. And I just think that was a great move by Dave Aranda to kind of pivot and go back to more of the high flying, gunslinging, like just see how many points we can score, like old school Big 12 type offense like that. But it was a great mixture of being balanced, like you just mentioned with Bryson Washington at the tailback and that passing game with Robertson. I just think, man, this Baylor offense and Sawyer Robertson is going to have a huge year as long as he can stay healthy. And bringing back wide receiver Josh Cameron and Ashton Hawkins, and then bringing in Kobe Prentice, transfer from Alabama. I mean, there might be an argument that can be made. We're going to dive deeper into this on like some of our lists that we're coming out with throughout the season. One of the lists that we come out with is going to be, top 10 skill position units. Baylor is going to possibly be into that with these three wide receivers, with Bryson Washington at tailback, and with Sawyer Robertson back. I mean, that is a hell of a skill position group. It's the best quarterback running back combo in the Big 12 with Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington. But you just said it, man. I mean, I think that we can project that as long as Sawyer Robertson stays healthy and this Spavital offense with the weapons he's going to have around him, he's going to throw for over 3,000 yards this year. And he's going to have some. You talked about this in one of our recent episodes when we were talking about Baylor being like a sleeper team for the college football playoff to make the college football playoff.
Yep.
And that some of the matchups that they're going to be featured in, especially the first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, there's not really any other teams in the country that plays two high-level P4 teams like that back-to-back weeks like Baylor is to open the season. They're going to be on a Friday night to open the year against Auburn. Tons of eyeballs on that game. They're going to be playing SMU, who made the playoff last year. That following week, there'll be a ton of people watching that game as well. And then obviously some of the shootouts they're probably going to find themselves in the Big 12 because there's such good quarterback play overall.
Yeah.
I mean, man, he's got a really big opportunity to have a huge year and to really be featured this year and be the guy that some of these people this offseason are projecting to possibly start shooting up the draft boards a little bit.
Number 3, Josh Hoover, TCU quarterback. You think this one surprises some people a little bit?
I do. I think TCU in general, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that TCU won like the quietest 9 wins last year, counting their bowl game.
Yeah.
I mean, TCU won 9 games last year.
Honestly, the last time people watched TCU and what they have in their minds is either the Colorado game or the Georgia game.
Yeah.
People just aren't watching a lot of TCU football to watch Josh Hoover throw for nearly 4,000 yards last year.
Right. The casuals around the nation, I agree. They're not sitting there tuning in watching like we are. They're not sickos like we are with 3 or 4 TVs and watching TCU match up and whoever they're matching up with I remember watching TCU Houston last year, which they ended up losing that game, by the way. I remember watching TCU UCF last year. It was a crazy game against KJ Jefferson and UCF. They lost that game too. So 2 of their maybe that was their problem. Maybe I just need to stop watching and they'll win all their games. But dude, Josh Hoover is, as far as passing yards goes, he's the number 1 returning passer in the Big 12 and number 2 returning passer in the entire nation as far as overall passing yards. That's what kind of numbers that Josh Hoover put up last year. And so I think TCU quietly won 9 games, and I think Josh Hoover quietly put up some of the best numbers and statistics that any quarterback in the country did last year. I mean, obviously, Cam Ward went to the NFL and Jackson Dart went to the NFL and, guys like that. So we're talking about returning quarterbacks this year. Josh Hoover is amongst the tops in the country of returning production at the quarterback position, not just the Big 12, but the entire country.
Yeah. Coming in number 4, we have had a long love with this guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But Rocco Becht, quarterback at Iowa State. And honestly, man, just really a model of consistency the past 2 years at Iowa State. Just a consistent force. Over 27 games that season. I mean, he threw for 3,100 yards 2 years ago, 3,500 last year, 23 touchdowns, and then 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 9 picks. So you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. They had a lot of returning production come back last year. And a lot of those guys, a lot of that was 2 guys that are now in Houston playing NFL.
Yeah,
And he's going to have to replace
Jaden Higgins.
Yeah, he's going to have to replace, some guys and find some new targets. Obviously, you got Sowell coming over from East Carolina, and he has to be a force on the outside for Rocco Becht to duplicate those numbers that he has the previous 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, his 33 touchdowns that he had last year, that's second in Iowa State's program history. And what I love most about Becht, dude, I mean, he's a leader. Again, kind of like what we talked about with Sam Leavitt, just that dog mentality. And dude, he's got underrated legs. Like on his running ability, he had 8 rushing touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
And when I think of Becht, like I don't think of him in that way. When I was looking up like his numbers overall and comparing guys, I'm like, bro, this guy had 8 rushing touchdowns last year, which was number 1 in the Big 12.
Yeah.
But he also too, he's clutch. He had 4 fourth quarter comebacks last year, which led the nation. Tied for second in the nation last year. So, I mean, for me, the question mark would be what you've already said. What is this Iowa State offense and what is he going to look like without 2 NFL receivers on the outside, like Nolan Higgins, like he had last year? Again, he's a veteran, man. I mean, he rewrote the record books at Iowa State as far as freshman was concerned 2 years ago. And he's played so much football. Savvy veteran now. I would, I know they picked up some guys in the transfer portal. Like I would imagine that Becht is going to be sitting there around over 3,000 yards passing again.
Yeah.
They're going to be leaning on him heavily for this offense again. So I imagine he's going to have a big year. He's a model of consistency. Hey, real quick, look at the bottom of this screen and hit that subscribe button for us, please. And also follow us on Apple and Spotify. It doesn't cost you a thing and it helps us out a ton. We greatly appreciate it.
Coming in at number 5, we got Avery Johnson, Kansas State quarterback. This is going to be the one I think like people are going to be like, why don't you have Avery Johnson like higher than this? I mean, you got Kansas State kind of a 1A, 1B with Arizona State as far as like, the rankings for the Big 12 goes. Other people are going to say, why is Avery Johnson ahead of some of these guys we're going to mention here in a second?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, man. I think it's a lot of that's got to do with because it depends on what you personally look for in a quarterback. Do you like the dual threat quarterback more? Like a guy like Avery Johnson that is just absolutely explosive with his legs? Or do you like a guy that's more of your traditional pocket passer that's going to just, throw dimes all over the field? That's not Avery Johnson. He's definitely, again, he's progressing more in the passing game. I think that's obviously an area where he does need to improve. Kansas State lost 4 games last year, and 3 of those 4 losses, Avery Johnson had 3 games where he threw multiple picks in those 3 games, and they were in 3 of Kansas State's 4 losses. His completion percentage, wasn't where you'd want it to be. I think what was it, like 59% or something like that?
58%. Yeah,
58%. But again, he's an explosive type athlete at the quarterback position. He was one of 3 quarterbacks: Jalen Milroe, Taylon Green, and Avery Johnson were the 3 quarterbacks that threw for at least 2,700 yards and had 600 yards rushing as well. It's going to be interesting to see too. Like, you want to talk about dynamic backfields overall for Kansas State? I mean, Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards, like both of those like athletes together, paired up in the backfield together. Whoo, that's some speed and some serious explosiveness, dude. With those 2 together, be interesting too. K-State lost their. We've talked about it on previous episodes. Connor Riley was a longtime offensive line coach there, considered by a lot to be one of the best in the entire country. I mean, K-State was one of the best year after year under Kleiman of not giving up sacks and not giving up, tackles for a loss. K-State last year with DJ Giddens, obviously, and Avery Johnson was one of the top rushing teams in the Big 12 and in the country. Connor Riley he's now the offensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys. So will they still be able to protect Avery Johnson and run the football, do the things that will help him at a high clip? Will they still be able to do those things at a high level like they have been when Connor Riley was there? Those are just some question marks I'd have on it. But again, we're talking about projecting here this year. I mean, I think it's safe to say, dude, is with the roster that Kansas State's going to have, with what we think they're going to be, with the model of consistency with Chris Kleiman, dude, Avery Johnson is going to have a big year, and he is fun to watch as any quarterback out there because of his dual threat ability.
Absolutely. Number 6, Texas Tech Red Raiders quarterback Behren Morton. This is a guy who's taken a leap every year since being the starting quarterback. I mean, 2 years ago, throwing for 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, doubling that to 15 touchdowns, nearly doubling it last year to 27 touchdowns. And we're shout out to our boy Joey McGuire. Shout out to Josh Abbott. Go check out that episode that released on Monday. Texas Tech is making some heavy investments, obviously on the offensive line, bringing in a couple transfers at the tackle position to protect this quarterback. He's already got weapons to throw to, and it should be very, very fun year in Lubbock.
Yeah, dude. In games that he has started and played in, like the entire game, Texas Tech is 14-4 the last 2 years in games that Behren Morton has started and played the entire game in. So, obviously, Texas Tech has a lot of success when Behren Morton is healthy. And he's the first Texas Tech quarterback ever. Think about all the quarterbacks that's played at Texas Tech. Guy by the last name of Mahomes, Kingsbury, Graham Harrell. He's the first Texas Tech quarterback ever to throw for at least 3,000 yards and have 8 or fewer interceptions in a season. But, yeah. And so going into this year, again, we're projecting here. I think you've gotten a kick out of on some of these lists that we give out, like who's the one that we're the most wrong about. I think this could be the one, man, that we're the most wrong about. As far as I think he could be much higher on this list with the weapons that he's going to have around him, with the investment, like you just said, that they've made in the offensive line, and then the run game with Joyner they brought in from USC, and then Mac Leftwich, the offensive coordinator they brought in from Texas State, and his history and what explosive offenses that he had with G.J. Kinney at Texas State, and him being an incarnate word before that with Cam Ward in the past. I mean, dude, if Behren Morton can stay healthy, we have proof here that they're going to win games, and I just think that he's going to project, man, to have a big year this year for the Red Raiders. And, dude, if I'll go ahead and say it for us. If they don't end up being really good this year, I know we're going to catch some hell from some people because we had our boy Josh Abbott on here recently, and we're fired up about Texas Tech this year too, and think they're going to be good along with some of these other teams that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think we're just hoping for them to be good for their sake too, for their fans' sake. I feel like they've got a solid set of fans down there. They've gone through the quarterbacks, like you mentioned, have the offensive success. Now they can get the defense going, but I just hoping good things for Texas Tech down there in Lubbock. Number 7 is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in the Big 12 when he's completely healthy, and that's Jalon Daniels at Kansas. Since 2021, Kansas has played 50 football games, and Jalon Daniels has played in 30 of them. That's 60%. And 2 years ago, man, they started off really hot. They had a game against Illinois. They won. They beat BYU. 3 games into the season, I mean, he was 75% passing with 700 yards and 5 touchdowns already, gets injured. And I'm not convinced that he fully ever recovered from that last year, especially at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure he was completely healthy. Obviously, at the end of the year, we watched them play against Colorado, and he was, running and throwing up the field. But he did, again, he had his most pass attempts last year, which led to the most interceptions he threw last year. He threw 12 picks. So he's got to cut down on those turnovers.
Yeah, and he's under his, again, I'm not making excuses for him, but this is something that you got to factor in. He's on his 3rd offensive coordinator in the last 3 years. That's tough, man, for a quarterback. He doesn't have the coaching continuity as his offensive coordinator position. I mean, obviously Lance Leipold does a hell of a job there for the Jayhawks. I mean, he's one of those, again, that he does more with less. I agree with you. If Daniels is healthy, he can be as fun and as explosive from a dual threat ability and the ability with his legs. He's accurate. He can throw the ball downfield, throw the deep ball well. Some people are going to look at this and they're going to be, stat sheet Sallies, as I like to say, and they're just going to go look at that he had only 14 touchdowns and 12 interceptions last year. But I do agree with you. A lot of that had to do with the way that he started the year, and Kansas started the year off rough. Dude, I think they started. They were like, didn't they start 0-6? And they were
like 0-6, 1-6, something like that.
Yeah, they were like, I think they were 0-6, and then they were about to be one of the, if not the only team, or one of the only teams in college football history. They were one game away from being that team that went 6-0 down the stretch. Remember, they beat BYU in that crazy game at BYU. That kind of
I think you're right.
Yeah. And then they ran into what we just talked about earlier with Sawyer Robertson and how Baylor finished the year and how Sawyer Robertson finished the year. Kansas ran into that buzzsaw there at the end of the year.
I think there was even a case like going into the last season that Kansas could still make the Big 12 championship game at some point.
Dude, we were talking about it, and there were many other shows talking about it, that at that time in the wide open Big 12, like there is no team in the Big 12 that wanted to step on the field with Kansas at that time. I mean, they were beating everybody until they ran into that Baylor buzzsaw. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I do think Jalon Daniels, like I feel comfortable. We got him ranked right here. He's another one that, like you said, if he stays healthy, he could shoot up this list too.
Finally coming in at number 8. I think this is probably purely projection here, and we're excited about this guy, but it's Devon Dampier, quarterback for the Utah Utes. You look at his stats last year playing for New Mexico, the yardage, almost nearly 2,800 passing yards and almost 1,200 rushing yards.
Yeah.
The issue for him were the 12 interceptions. And dude, I looked this up. He had 7 fumbles. So 19 total turnovers.
Awful.
In 12 games. And obviously, Kyle Whittingham is not going to stand for that.
Nope.
If his quarterback's turning the ball over, he will go to a guy that nobody knows, and he'll probably have more success with him. But
he might be a pig farmer. He might be a pig farmer.
Exactly. But Devon Dampier is one of those guys, like if he gets to his full potential at Utah under that new offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, I mean, I think that sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah, I think that this is a situation to where it could really work out well for Dampier because, I think a lot of that could be wrong. Time will tell. I think a lot of the turnover issues for him was everything was on his shoulders at New Mex. Literally everything. And that's not going to be the case at Utah with one of the best offensive lines in the country, 2 offensive tackles that are projected first-round picks for Utah. Like you said, we know that Whittingham and the way that style of play that Utah is going to be, they want to be able to run the football. They want to be able to keep your offense off the field. They want to control the pace. They want to control the game. They want to take that Morgan Scalley defense and just whip your ass for 4 quarters is what Utah wants to do. So it's not going to be all put on Devon Dampier's shoulders. What I'm interested to see, though, does Witt kind of like let Jason Beck and Dampier with his exciting dual threat ability, like cut it loose a little bit?
Yeah.
Because obviously, dude, there's nobody in college football the last few years that has been bitten by the injury bug worse than Utah at the quarterback position and held hostage by the quarterback position more than the guy that is, I just checked the injury report, and Cam Rising is questionable going into this season. He's not even playing college football.
Yeah.
But he's questionable.
Questionable on LinkedIn.
He's wherever he's at, he's questionable. And that sucks, man. I love Cam Rising. One of my favorite players to watch there for a few years. But yeah, he's just always questionable. So if Dampier can stay healthy with the run game they're going to have, the offensive line they're going to have, with the transfers they brought in at the skill position, I mean, dude, our boy Witt kind of he dipped into that transfer portal, man. And I think he realized he needed to get better at the skill position overall, needed to get a little bit more explosive. So that just tells me that I do think they are going to open it up a little bit more. It's just not going to all be on his shoulders because he's not, again, no offense to New Mex, not trying to have New Mex catch any strays here. But this Utah bunch is obviously going to be a lot more talented, and their style of play on both sides of the ball, I think, is going to dictate more that Dampier is going to be able to have a huge year for the Utes. And I'm so excited to watch him play, man, because that is a huge X factor in the Big 12 overall this year. Because we know that Morgan Scalley and that defense is going to be good. What we don't know is Devon Dampier's game going to transfer from the level and the competition that he was playing against at New Mex? Will it transfer to week in and week out playing in the Big 12 and playing in the P4 and playing some of the teams that Utah is going to be playing this year? That's what I'm excited to see with this bunch.
There's the Big 12 quarterbacks. A lot of experience, and then we think there's a lot of potential. So it should be an exciting year in the Big 12. We've hit the ACC, we've hit the Big 10, the Big 12. There's only one conference left. What is it?
We're going with the SEC, baby, next.
We're going with the SEC. The quarterback rankings for the SEC will be coming out soon. And then we'll really get into ranking season, ramping up in July and everything. So once again, hope you guys are enjoying these shorter episodes you can listen to on your drive into work or wherever. Watch it, real quick at home. We appreciate you watching and subscribing on YouTube and following on X and Instagram and all that. Keep them coming. We're getting close to a lot of our goals before the season kicks off here. So we will see you next time.